But anyway, we're gonna be on top of it for the, whoops. So, that was last year. Some idiot said we wasn't gonna have one in Louisiana, and it looks like he was right, whoever that guy was. For a declaration of emergency, like Tom was saying, the parish president to declare an emergency, any mayor, the tribal chief, of course, the governor makes the declaration, hopefully gets back up to the president of the United States, and the one we really gotta have every year is the president declaring a national state of emergency. That's when the majority of our reimbursement money kicks in. We don't get that. So just keep that in mind. So, but that's the pecking order basically for how things are gonna go. Like I said, we'll have our meetings in here. We try to put out the information as fast as we can. Brady's here today with his YouTube streaming it. We are recreating a web page right now, and we're gonna have everything on the web page. We'll try to put it on the web page, and the main thing on the web page will be the links to the Weather Service, to NOAA, Storm Prediction Center, any link we can give you. And let me tell you folks, the reason we do that is you can read it just like I can read it. And that's basically how good they've gotten. They have gotten very good at doing predictions now. He had the cone, how small the cone has shrunk a little bit over the years. It is absolutely correct. They do a lot better job of predicting than they've ever done before. And of course, we'll send out emails to everybody. If you're not on our list, call the office, get with Janet. Janet will put you on our email list, and everybody will get the same email. Well, we try to tell everybody, you know, the last couple of hurricanes, the major cause of most of the deaths was generator exhaust systems. In the living room, running the generator. I mean, at some point, you know, I don't know, but I'm just telling you the facts. That's all I'm telling you is what's going on with that. And of course, what we're concerned about here on the coast is the high water levels, the storm surge predictions. We rely on Mike very heavily on giving us the English version of what they put out. They're gonna say all these big long terms sometimes. They do a lot better than they've done. But at the end of the day, we need somebody to help interpret that. And Mike and Tim Mott and them do a great job helping us try to get an idea of what to expect. It's important that whether you're at your house, your business, schools, that you take as much time as you can to document what you've done prior to the storm. We have found that, you know, FEMA will come back 6 months later and say, hey, by the way, you didn't take a photograph of that, or, you know. And there's always gonna be looking for reasons not to pay you, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. So you try to do as much as you can free with pictures, documentation, invoices, and then what we found on a lot of the generators is, you know, they got people have generators and they got a fuel tank, but they don't have a maintenance man at midnight when the generator goes out. So you gotta think about all of that down the line, that you have something in line all the time in the event you have a loss of power or whatever. And of course, the call-out list for all your departments obviously is really, really important as well. That's back on our storm surge predictions. That's gonna be a lot of what we depend on Mike for. And of course, we get those straight every day. When he was talking about all of those little spots on, when Tom was talking about all those little spots on the coast, this is kind of one of the, I can't remember, it was Hurricane Delta. You see how fast things will go from 11 p.m. it was at 6, at 7 o'clock the next morning, it dropped almost 1.5 feet. We check that pretty much every hour when we're at the office and we have power. This last storm, we learned a lot about the Starlink system, which we're gonna have now, I can tell you, because without Starlink, we'd have been in trouble. We wouldn't have been able to talk talked to Earl last couple of years because of that, but we got through it. And by the way, this year, all the hospitals have a ham radio. 911 center has a ham radio, or fixing to be. You're gonna get it, you're gonna get it. And that's gonna be kind of our backup system. What happened now? Well, that's his fault. What you did? You jinxed it. Just stay. Anyway, and you can see that's how we track that every year, because we like to know where the water's going, right? Because that's one of our main things. This little fellow lives in Sentinel Point. He has logged every hurricane that's had an impact at Sentinel Point, and does a real good job. When he says we have a 8-foot tidal surge, we know exactly how much the water went up at Sentinel Point. And we've used that post-storm to go take elevation shots at these locations just to see. So, but that he does that on his own, and he is, as you can see, Rita's way up at the top. Rita was actually worse than Laura. And that was the one right after Katrina. GetAGamePlan.org, it'll give you all the, it's like a little checklist. You can get it all done. We got some interesting things coming up this year if we have to do an evacuation. And I think as the last few years have taught us is, it comes in as a Cat 1, and then right before it makes landfall, it might pop up 1 or 2 notches, which really makes it a lot worse. And it might get us in a situation where if we'd have known that it was coming, we might have evacuated sooner or called for the evacuation. But after a certain point, it's almost impossible to try to call an evacuation when it's too late. So, but that GetAGamePlan.org, and if you pick up some of our catalogs over here, you'll see that as well in it. This is going to be our problem this year. The hurricane evacuation route that we use obviously is 90. But I'm going to tell you who else uses it. Terrebonne, Lafourche, Plaquemine, St. Bernard, Orleans. Everybody to our east uses Highway 90. And this year we're going to have a little bit of an issue because we got a DOTD rep here today who's we've been working real closely with. Highway 90 in New Iberia is one lane, one direction. So it's going to be very obvious this year that there's going to be some early calls for evacuation as opposed to years in the past. I know that, I want to say it was even Andrew, back in Andrew's days, we had people sitting in line for 3 and 4 hours, wind up turning around, going back to their house because they didn't want to get caught. So we've had, again, conversation. We got a big meeting coming up next week in Lafayette, which is the key to our evacuation is that the Evangeline Thruway work the red lights to allow people to go as opposed to letting them cycle on their own. Now, we were promised every year that's what they'll do. They ain't done it yet. They're getting a little better, but they have not done it yet. So that's going to be the next, what I call a bottleneck. But this bottleneck in New Iberia is going to really be something we're going to be a little bit concerned with. We've got DOTD, our counterparts, Press Marshal in Iberia, State Police. They've all been in contact that we're going to have more police officers to direct people around those areas if we can. At the end of the day, I think you're better off just sitting in traffic and going one lane. At least it's going to move. Because one of the alternative routes, well, this is what it looks like right now. That's where it is, which is basically from Jefferson Terrace to Center Street, Highway 14.
And it's horrible.
And it's horrible. One of the evacuation routes that they are asking us to at least let people know about is pretty much, I mean, it'll work to get off at Jefferson Terrace. The first interchange you come to will take you all the way through to Center Street. You come out by Lowe's, and then you can merge back. And you remember now, this is one lane. Highway 90 will be one lane. And when they get to Center Street, the one lane will be in the left lane. So if you're merging from Center Street onto Highway 90, you shouldn't have to worry about merging, because it's gonna be one lane each way, and you'll be able to roll until you get to Lafayette, of course. So, but we're trying. I mean, there's really just not any options. And again, it's not necessarily Iberia, St. Mary folks. It's people to our east that's gonna be, rolling through here.
So David, excuse me.
Yeah.
Is it possible to coordinate that with the National Weather Service Center to make those mandatory evacuations, to get our people out of the way first before those other folks start?
The problem is that you'll never get there like that, because it's gonna be in past. It just depends on where the storm is projected to go. If it's projected to go like Ida did, they're gonna go. They're gonna get on top of us, and once they're on top of us, we're stuck. So.
Is there any way you can put signage up, or is the levee still in evacuation route?
We took the Levee Road 3 weeks ago. They had holes back there 7 foot deep. But that's not the problem. The problem is there is no cell service from the time you leave the Sherrington locks until you get past Lake Falls Point.
Wow.
There's you can get cell coverage. You gotta go up on top of the levee. You gotta drive up on top of the levee to get cell coverage. So you really can't. Now I'm gonna tell you, local people are still gonna use it, because we have people use the levee every year we have an evacuation, or if they just wanna go travel. It is a pretty good ways to go. The problem with the Levee Road is you gotta get on I-10 and you're gonna wind up back in Lafayette anyway.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know if it's really doing us any good, but I certainly don't believe we could put people from St. Bernard, Plaquemine, Terrebonne, Lafourche, Assumption on that Levee Road. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that at all.
What are the issues with contraflow, having both lanes going north and south?
Well, it just really, you can't do it now because it's only one lane of traffic. Contraflow is not,
The southbound lane turning north.
then you're dead on anybody coming the other way. There's nowhere to go. Yeah, Luke?
David, aren't we gonna be painting the old bridge too? That's gonna be another obstacle around.
Yeah, they claim they are. I don't know where they stand with it right now. I think it's been let for bid, so it'll be coming up pretty soon, but it'll be a multi-year project. It won't be a one and done. So yeah, it's gonna be some tricky stuff around this year. What you did? Uh-huh. All right, let's talk about shelters real quick. We don't plan on having any shelters at all. They're gonna be some, at last resort, something happens or whatever. But our shelter that we use for St. Mary Parish is in central Louisiana. And it's a lot involved in it, obviously, and if you happen to go feed that many people, it's pretty tough. But we'll use our school buses. We have contracts with our school employees to drive the buses. We are asking that, when is Brandon coming for the ET and change training?
June.
June.
Yes.
Sometime in June, we'd like, Mayor, y'all maybe to talk to us about trying to help signing the people up in the event we have a major evacuation. Now we use driver's licenses if you have an ID card, but you still have to go have someone log it all in, and we need help with that. So we'll be in touch with y'all here real quick, because it's coming up pretty soon, and we'd like somebody to come in there and try to help us, and it'll be it might be some of your citizens anyway. So we're still gonna pick up at the Morgan City Junior and the Franklin High School to get them, to log them in before we send them. We have to send them with a registration. If you've never seen a shelter, that's what they look like. I think it's cruel and unusual punishment that we put people through that, but you gotta remember, it's a last resort. You got no other options. And that's, I tell everybody, you got a cot, and you got another cot, and that's it. There's not a lot of privacy, and it's very stressful for the people that are in these shelters, I can tell you. So, it wasn't quite that bad 2 years ago when we was helping Earl out, but it was still pretty,
It was
Where's
close.
Where's that one, David? Is that?
that was the Superdome. Now, in the post-storm, what we'd like to ask every municipality to do, or everybody really, is the damage.la.gov is an app that you can show that you've had damage. And the reason it's important to us is the parish has to meet a threshold of how much damage occurred. School boards, I know y'all gonna have damage in some of y'all places. We'd like for you to get with us on that because we have to meet a threshold in order to receive reimbursement. And what y'all spend and what the mayor of Berwick spends and the mayor of Morgan City has to spend, in addition to what the parish has to spend, all goes into the same pot, so to speak, that we can get our threshold up high enough that we can get reimbursement, maybe from 75% to 90% reimbursement. Yeah, Bill?
What about the drainage district?
Everybody, yes, sir, everybody. Very important.
So,
And that's debris, and then building damage. If you had to open a shelter, you spent some money. I mean, it's almost anything you do. Yeah.
so considering that, my question is there some method besides this meeting where we're communicating with all of those sub-entities within the parish portfolio so that people know what to track, when to start that process, so that that documentation flows easily?
Great question, because last year the legislature passed, Darren, this is the public official, elected official workshop, yeah, where everybody has to attend, is that right? Did it
So that's
pass?
happening right now?
It happens online.
It happens online, yeah.
You can take the classes online.
And then, like, for the city or somebody, we'll be glad to come out for the city or the school board and explain that maybe in a little bit more detail, Patterson, wherever, to make sure they understand that, because we don't always get it.
Yeah, I think our issue in the past has been underreporting.
Right.
Because people are not familiar.
Well,
with
once we hit the
what-
threshold, we good, but we gotta hit the threshold. Like for Barry, I argue with them every year. Barry wasn't a hurricane. All of the things we checked, we never saw a sustained wind over 75 miles an hour. But it was a hurricane, okay, we all, kind of understand that, but, when those smaller events occur, it's hard to get your damage assessments up high enough to where you can get your reimbursement back. And that's what the goal is for that, for sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Yo,
so let's just quickly right there, too. You got to call it assessment, but damage assessment is critical too to get IA.
Right.
American here, but to get individual assessments for people affected. So
That's what the atmosphere.
yeah, once you hit that, that's correct. And then, we'll be putting that out, obviously, once we get there, that the IA, which is individual assistance, and then there's PA for public assistance for the municipalities and the parish and school boards and whatever. But the drainage districts and sewer districts, they're all covered already. So it all goes in the same pot. Yeah, we went through all the cell phones and all of that, didn't work last year, for Ida. But certainly, we look forward to the days when either the mayor can call and say, all right, y'all can come back to Morgan City. And I say you can't, we're just trying to get input from as many of the local, elected officials as we can. The main thing is to make sure when they come back, they're gonna have a good shot at getting their utility services back up and running, water, the basic commodities. Or in the case of Ida a few years ago, our gas stations were overworked, obviously, for a long time, but it works out. It was very, very stressful for everybody, but I think we did the best job we could. And of course, drinking water. Now, for the municipalities and school boards and the water and drainage districts, if y'all have a need for some equipment, it's set up to where y'all have to go through us to make the request up to GOSEP. It's called Web EOC. What we do is we bring in somebody every year. They sit in the office, they sit in front of the computer, and we go in there and say, we need a water pump, an 8-inch water pump at 123 Main Street, whatever, and they order it, and we get it brought in. That's for the police officers as well. And then as time goes on, we'll start getting supplies in. We may not get them right away, but we have a 12,000 square foot National Guard armory that is gonna get remodeled, hopefully this year, to where we can do a little bit better job of holding on to some of our supplies, MREs, water. We got a little bit of everything in there. So if you need something, call us. If we don't have it, we'll try to get it for you. But certainly any major request, you need to go through us. Which is why we'd like for y'all to stay in touch with us during an event, especially if you got affected. You know, like the last couple of storms, maybe Franklin gets hit worse than Morgan City or vice versa. Well, then we can shift down here and basically be close by to cover whatever we need. There's a couple of pictures of some of the, what is it, shelf clouds? Huh? Shelf clouds? I fudged, I looked it up. That was in Mississippi. That's another one in Mississippi from the other side. We got this is the makings of the one that hit New Iberia a couple years ago. And actually, we actually have a picture of the actual tornado. That was taken at the airport right before it hit. Maybe on the other side you can start seeing it, but that was the one that went through up Jefferson Terrace and out the other end. Like Tom was saying about all the flights and stuff, we have a Civil Air Patrol here. Paul Rappermont is one of the pilots, and they do a lot of flying for GOSEP for riverine flooding and post-storm flooding. So we do have that if you need it. You know, with the advent of all the drones, I know some of y'all have drones. I would do drone pictures of every facility you have before and after, just to be able to document what you got. The drones are the easiest way to go, obviously. So if you have access to that. Now, we're not in El Nino yet. When this first started up, it was supposed to be May through July, it was gonna form. And I kinda like the idea that this year we're gonna get an El Nino event that occurs. But what basically all it does is, instead of the easterlies, there's a chance that it'll be knocked down, or maybe actually turn around and go to westerlies, which would really help deter some of the growth of some of the storms. Now the problem with all of that, these are the last El Nino years that I found. 2005, Katrina, Rita, that's pretty cool, yeah. Laura, Delta, and Zeta that year. 17 was Hurricane Harvey, 60 inches of rain. What are we gonna do if we have 60 inches of rain in St. Mary Parish? The levee systems are great to keep all the water out, but once you get rain on the inside, I don't know what we do. And of course, he said it before. Audrey caused all of those deaths in Cameron Parish in '57, Betsy in '65, but Hilda was a La Nina year that came right through St. Mary Parish. So I look at it this way. I think we got a chance that it's gonna be a slower year this year, but if you get one, it's gonna be bad. And of course, as we all know, it don't take but one to ruin your day. Look, Hurricane Andrew was an August storm. That was an A-named storm in August. So it could still happen, and I'll just say that stay in touch with us. If you have any questions, if you have an organization, you know, Mayor, you want something just for your city, we'll come do that. We'll come get with your public works crew and everything. Have no problem doing that for anybody, really, even the school board. We stay in touch with them fairly regular. So, and that's really all we have today. Sorry about the broken voice, but anybody got any other questions real quick?
David, I got a
Yeah.
question. We had a shelter for a weekend, we had some issues with people with COVID that was in there. And when they got there, people in the shelter didn't want to be there because of COVID.
Duval, speak up a little louder, people can hear you in the back.
Don't hit the button. Tori will jump on you.
Okay. We had an issue with, in our shelter in Berwick with some people with COVID. And when they showed up, it caused quite a problem at that shelter. Is there any chance that we can possibly set up a shelter just for people with special medical issues? I know they're not gonna take them at the medical shelter with COVID, that's not enough of an emergency. But is there some place that we might be able to move these people to where it doesn't cause all the eruption that it caused us last time?
Yeah, and by the way, when Earl called us to open up those shelters, guess who the first guy was, that stepped up? It was a little bit of an issue, but the COVID threat is all over now. There is a place for them to go, but they have to be triaged, I guess, first, and that's what caused our problem before, is we just had too much too quick dumped on us. That was Earl's fault, though. We love you, Earl, you know that. But yeah, they do have a place for those special needs people, and I think Lake Forest Point was one of them, wasn't it, Jimmy? I think Lake Forest Point, and the one in
Chico State Park.
Chico State Park, that was the other one, yeah, yeah. Anything else? All right, we're gonna move right along. Mike, I'm gonna do one thing ahead of you, but you can start coming up. After Mike was scheduled to be the Corps of Engineers, I have a letter from Mr. Vic Landry. He wanted me to read in. And he wants everybody to know that we defer to the United States Coast Guard for channel closures, and we will have channel condition surveys performed as soon as after the storm passes, as early as possible, safety permitting. We will host our navigation restoration conference call prior to and following the storm's landfall to share all details of channel conditions in addition to the U.S. Coast Guard's port coordination conference call. But he couldn't come today, they had another meeting scheduled. So, Mr. Mike, your turn. Don't touch the button. Yeah.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Sure this is still on. I'm gonna go real quick. This is our district base map. One thing that I am happy to report this year is we actually have continuous levee coverage from Wax Lake Outlet, north of the Intercoastal, all the way to Sherrington Canal. We completed that loop summer of last year. We had the Bayou Test structure, and we have the Yoakley structure. Our biggest area of concern now is everything south of 90 and west of the Sherrington Canal. We're currently in the process of doing a hydrological study to see where we're gonna go with those projects. Those lines that are currently on there, some proposed levee segments. The biggest thing is tying into Iberia Parish.
Where's the parish line on that map?
I think it's that white line right there. There you go. Just real quick, a couple of our newer structures and our older as well. This is the Bayou Test structure, which keeps water from Sherrington Canal coming into the east side of the Bayou Test. We had to use this during, I think it was either Laura or Delta. It was in construction. We cut it off with sheet pile just to get us through the storm. And then we did close it 2 years ago for Ida. Wasn't necessary, but one of our mottos is we'd rather be damned that we did than damned that we didn't. So, you know, depending on where we know the storm's going, for instance, this structure, there is no pump station to pump the water out of Bayou Teche, but we do know, we've run models that there's plenty of storage there. We also know what the lowest houses are in that segment, So those are the ones we're gonna be concerned about first. Next one, this is a big one, the Yoakley extension. This is over on Industrial Road in Franklin. Right there, you can see that is Metal Shark. You can see Sherrington Canal kind of runs left to right. This was Hurricane Delta, I believe. But it overflows its banks during a good storm surge push, and was flooding out there as well as Gulf Crack. Well, last year we finished up a project, and it's a removable flood wall and levees. So within both of these shipyards, basically cutting right through the middle of their docks, we had these removable flood walls installed. I don't know how this is going. Let me see if this works. Yeah, there it goes. This is a time lapse of it being installed. The levee district has hired a contractor that'll go in a couple days before. Whenever we get into, we're in a watch period. We're gonna go out, we're gonna assemble some of this stuff, leave it open so they can continue business. And then the day before the storm, we'll go in and finish closing it off. Really cool system, came from Germany. They can continue their operations on a normal day. With this, you can see the concrete base. This is the only thing that's visible there on a daily basis.
And is that 8 feet?
That is to an elevation of 10 and a half. It's roughly about 8 feet tall with a 2.5 foot ground elevation.
Do you need any decoration to go ahead and install? I mean, like,
No, typically, so just kind of going off of what David said. When we get into a situation, and I'm speaking for the levee district, when we get into a situation where we know we may be doing flood fight activities, there's things that we're gonna have to spend money on, the levee district will go and have a special meeting and declare a state of emergency. That gives us the authority to spend the emergency money to do whatever flood fighting activities and things like that we need. Pulling the trigger on this contractor is one of those things. So this is a really cool system. There's a total of about, I think it's 800 or 900 feet of this removable flood wall. Can literally be done in a day. Super easy, super quick. I believe this week the contractor was going out, just kind of check all the supplies, check all the bolts, things like that. So that one's ready. Bayou Tesh was tested last week. Everything's operational. Bayou Shane, which we'll talk about in a minute, is going to be tested next week. Some of our other stuff, Franklin Canal. This is operated by the city of Franklin and their fire department. So they take care of the closure on this and running the pump station. This structure is going on 10 years old this year. So we've been doing maintenance, things like that. We'll do a maintenance closure here coming up pretty soon on that structure. That's another picture of it. And now it has actually 4 pumps installed. This is an older picture, so the other 2 pumps aren't there. Hanson Canal, which is operated by the parish. We're fortunate, before we used to have to bring in a standby generator to hook it up, to just press a button and close it. It took longer to get the generator out there than it did to actually close it. They now have a standby generator on the pump station adjacent to this that they hook the power up to it, so now it's easy. It literally takes 10 minutes. The Yellow Bayou closure and pump station, also operated by the parish over on Yellow Bayou on Alice Road. This prevents water from getting into the Centerville area around the school board office. What's happening? And then, of course, all the Morgan City backwater stuff. The only locations currently that we have, I'll call them gaps, would be the lakefront and lakeside, and then the discharge canal along LA 70. They are hopefully going to be finished with that pump station on the lakefront here in the next couple months, which will wrap up that portion of the project. And then this is more or less just kind of a blown up, zoomed in of the district map. In the past probably 5 years, we've had a number of overtoppings on the Bayou Sally levees. Typically, those are some of the first people that are evacuated from the area. Again, we have, I'm gonna call it 9 feet as being the lowest levee in this, Centerville Franklin area. We did lift Yoakley to 10.5. Our goal is to get everything on that south side to 10.5. The good thing about it, even if these levees are overtopped, which they never have been, there's still a good bit of area that can be filled in with that water. You also have the pump stations for each of those different basins. So while it's a threat, it's not a tremendous threat. The Corps came in a couple of years ago and closed another problem area, which was the gap over by Cabot. So that area is taken care of. At this point, there is very little, besides closing structures, of flood fighting. And when I say flood fighting, I mean sandbags, HESCOs, things like that. There's very little of that we need to do with the storm up and coming. This is the Berwick, Bayou Vista, Patterson area. Again, very well protected. The city of Berwick takes care of the floodgates on the riverfront. There's no other closures besides the locks and the East Calumet floodgate, but those are closed as well. We have lifted anything in this vicinity to a 12.5-foot mark, so it's a very well protected area as well. Your flood insurance doesn't think so, but we do. And then, of course, you got the Morgan City area. Again, the city of Morgan City takes care of the floodgates here, as well as the Walnut Street Canal floodgate. Area is very well protected as well. The one thing I don't have on here is Bayou Chene. Bayou Chene is not a storm surge floodgate. It is a riverine floodgate. But as experienced during Hurricane Barry, we had a storm I'll call it to the west of the river, and we had in a temporary emergency structure at Bayou Chene, and it worked well. The biggest thing that we have to pay attention to is where is it gonna make landfall? If it makes landfall to the east of Bayou Chene, it's not good to have it closed, so we'd rather have it open in that instance. So that's one thing that we'll be monitoring. Bayou Teche is typically going to be closed 3 or 4 days before any storm, just because we need to get all of the, any rainwater that's in there, we need to have it out. So when the gate is closed, it has the ability of letting water out. I know in Terrebonne for Ida, they had a bunch of damaged barge structures. Their situation is a good bit different. Theirs is a closed system. I think the Bubba Dub did not have flow-through gates, am I correct?
Yeah, but then it broke loose.
Yeah, so what happened there, you probably saw in the news stories, they had more water on the inside than they did on the outside. Those barges are designed to do the opposite. So whenever you put that water inside and it's pushing it out, what it basically did was ripped it away from the structure. We don't have any structures in our district that can happen to, because there's always an outlet. For instance, Bayou Chene, if you get, the water can go east, there's other places it can go. It's not gonna force that structure open. As well, we have flow-through gates there. Bayou Teche, same thing. If the water on the inside gets higher than the water on the outside, the gates open up and it lets the water out. One of the things just to keep in mind, we have been living the FEMA dream for, I've been around 10 years. 10 years. We thought we had it all pinned down. We knew how to operate the system. It doesn't matter. It changes every time. All I can tell you is document every possible thing you can, because they're going to ask you questions that make absolutely no sense, and you have to be able to answer them, or they're going to say, well, we're not paying you for that. In fact, we just got one from Laura saying, this is Hurricane Laura, that was what, 2 years ago? 3 years ago? 3 years ago. We still haven't closed out those PWs because they asking silly questions that make absolutely no sense. So make sure you got all of your information ready to go, and even when you think you got it made, they're still gonna ask questions. Any questions? Thank you all.
Captain Russell with the Coast Guard.
Okay, good morning. Commander Ben Russell, Commanding Officer of the Coast Guard, Morgan City. So, I just foot stomped the flexibility the Coast Guard, your Coast Guard has in this town. So today there are between 4 units, 100 Coast Guard sentinels on duty here. And they're presently directing traffic of vessels, they're managing pollution, they're inspecting vessels. But that flexibility changes when we have a contingency plan and we have to support the emergency support functions. And so, Ida, we grew to about a force of 250 within 5 days. And so there's a flexibility there that we can push out to the field. The capabilities are unique to supporting the civil authorities. And so I think we integrate well. There's a plan of dedicated professionals here that are absolutely trained in contingency management. They do their job very, very well in that sense. Thank you to our landlord. We stay here. We don't necessarily evacuate. However, those sentinels that do evacuate eventually can get pulled back in, and for any of our mission sets that are necessary to recover the area. I think Ida was a great test bed for us. The damage was, of course, far to the, well, not far, but to the east of us, and that's where we were able to go. We lived here, thank you to some very generous neighbors of Morgan City that put us up. So we can come as long as we can have a place to lay our heads for a few weeks. But that's really kind of it. So we're here, we're flexible to support, and we can really do many, many things with these capabilities and authorities. Any questions for the Coast Guard? Thank you.
There's Gary.
There he is.
Gary.
Good morning. As far as the sheriff's office goes, we're prepared and ready for another hurricane season. Some of the things that we do, we patrol as normal until a hurricane hits. At that time, we'll pull our deputies off the streets depending on the strength of the winds. Really what we do is afterwards. Afterwards, we have equipment to help clear off the roadways, because if there's emergencies, if we can't get to people, we can't help them. We also have equipment such as high water vehicles, boats for rescues, things of that nature. We also have contact with LSA, which is Louisiana Sheriff's Association, that can provide assistance as far as other equipment and manpower. We also have our webpage that we also put out as much information and share as much information as we can of what's going on. And we also provide a lot of photos to Homeland Security as far as damages and stuff like that, since we're out there and we see it firsthand. The biggest thing I would say is please heed the warnings and be prepared. So any questions, anything?
Sir, do you have any credentialing or anything to try to control people coming in and out?
What it normally is, Homeland Security will issue some badges to come in.
No, you can't have one.
But it seems like they don't like you, so I don't think you'll be welcome back.
Well, I was hoping to get around David.
You're
You
in
gotta go
trouble.
straight to Cindy for that.
You're in trouble. But no, we just do our best to help secure the areas.
We do.
Max, he's.
I tell you, this is quite a group we have here today. We've been doing this for years. Last year, when Ida hit our next door neighbor and everything, everybody comes together. So this is a tremendous practice drill going forward. Hopefully, we don't have to use the building this year like we had for the last several years, but if it has to, it's a good place and everybody works together. But just in closing, between St. Mary Parish, Porter Morgan City, and all the different agencies here together today, thank everybody for coming out, and thank everybody for working together. This is I mean, the municipalities, it's the parish, the different agencies, the different state agencies, the different federal agencies represented. Pretty good turnout. This is not bad. And this is very good for the area, so if something does happen, I know we're in good hands. And with that, I just want to thank everybody for coming out today. Thank y'all very much. Good luck this hurricane season.
I have one other thing. I want to thank Brady for coming
Oh,
to,
great, we'll get it on the
for
website.
recording today. So that will be available on KQKI's Facebook page for anyone to go
Yes,
back.
Facebook and YouTube channel as well.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you, Brady.
Got it.
And Cindy, I think David said they're gonna put it on.
They will put it on their website.
Good, great.
And that's on KQKI, Facebook, and YouTube.
Thanks, Brady.
Got it.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out today. Thank y'all.